All right, it is now 6 p.m. on Monday, December 21st, 2020. I hereby call this special meeting to order to discuss facility planning. I'm sorry, I'm scrolling down to see the agenda here. Discussion of board committees, President pro temp for January, next year's meeting dates, and then executive session to discuss personnel. Karen, roll call, please.
Mrs. Strong.
Here.
Mr. Larmer. Mr. Larmer.
Here, sorry.
That's okay. Mr. Bussey.
Here.
Ms. Matlin. Is she not here?
I'll text her while you're finishing.
Okay. Mrs. McKinley.
Here.
Okay, I just sent her a text. Joe, do you want to start talking about the facilities planning?
Well, I thought we could talk about the quick stuff first and then
Oh,
get into
yeah.
facility planning, and then we can do the, hopefully we'll have time for executive session, and if not, we can add that to the regular board meeting.
Okay,
So the easy ones are the board committees, the president pro tem, and the regular meeting dates for next year.
okay. Judy's not on yet. I haven't heard.
Oh, she's coming.
Oh, is she coming? Okay.
Yeah.
There she is. You have to unmute yourself, Judy.
Okay, sorry about that. I just got off with the court, so
Oh, that's fine.
we had to clear out the jails tonight.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, we're going to start talking about the, we're going to start with the board discussion, committee discussions for next year. I mean, does anybody want to make any changes, stay the same, or any questions? I know we don't decide until next year, but.
No, I'm fine with what I have personally, but you know,
A question. Should we, like we have the group that works directly with the schools, the NDEIC, should we make that an official committee because they do work with us? I mean, and I've been going to the meetings and stuff and, you know, it could be something that's reported out on. I didn't know if you wanted to make it an official piece or not.
I would not make it an official board committee because then you would have to have postings and it'd be open to the public. I think you can appoint a liaison to that group so that you don't have to worry about those other things.
That makes sense. That's why I wanted to run it by you guys. So, okay.
Okay. Bill, Chad, any?
I'm fine with the committees I'm on. I mean, committees have kind of fallen apart this year. We haven't had a lot of meetings with everything going on. So I'm fine with picking up where we left off if we ever get to leave our houses again.
I agree. Bill? Well, you already
I'm
picked
fine.
the one, Bill.
I'm fine with everything.
Okay.
I know I also have CVCC, so.
Yep. Okay. All right, moving on then. We need a nomination for president pro tem for the January meeting.
I mean, I'm happy to do it. It's just banging a gavel to start the meeting. So,
And we don't even use a gavel anymore, so.
right. No, it doesn't
Give me
matter to
one.
me.
I have two.
All right, then I'll nominate Chad for president pro tem for January meeting.
I'll second. Did that require a second, Tammy?
Yeah.
Okay.
Karen, roll?
Mrs. Strong.
Yes.
Ms. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. Bussey.
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley.
Yes.
Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
Okay. All right, next are the meeting dates for 2021. Is there anything on there that you see won't work?
Well, I had two that I was questioning. The June 28th, is that really late for the treasurer, Karen?
No, that's fine.
It's fine. Okay. That was my concern with that one. And then July 26th is really a challenge for me. If there's a way we could do a week earlier or yeah, it would have to be a week earlier.
Looking at my calendar, I don't think it's going to matter to me.
It doesn't matter to me, the 19th or the 26th.
I have no preference either.
Good for me.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. We can move that one to the 19th if you want.
I would really appreciate that. Thank you.
Any others?
What's the first day of school next year? I just don't remember. I meant to look it up. So our meeting
wait.
23rd.
I think it
Calendar's
is
up there.
I believe it's the first day is the
Dr. Clark, it's
26th. 26th.
Okay, so 23rd is fine by me.
I guess another question would be the September 27th. How do you feel about being there on your birthday, Joe?
I can't think of another way I'd prefer to celebrate my birthday than with
We
all
will
of you.
sing to you, but you will probably leave running.
Unless
see.
I expect the Browns will have several Monday night games next year, and if that happens to be one, I hope that we are done by kickoff. That's all I would say.
Amen.
What day was the August one again?
23rd.
23rd.
Do we want to do, isn't that going to be the open house night then if school starts on the 26th?
It could be. Todd's in here. Todd, do you have those dates set yet?
no, we usually don't set those until later in spring.
Because that's always been the problem is when we have it on Monday night and you've got open house and the teachers have to choose between being at open house or at the board meeting.
Well, that's usually and we didn't do it last year, of course, COVID. I am confident next year we're going to start a regular, normal school year. We're going to do it. I know it.
Mhm.
And so having said that, that would be the teacher's first day. And that would be the day that we would typically invite their new teachers to our board meeting to introduce them. Well, I don't have an issue with the 30th. If we wanted to go to the 30th, that gives a long time between the July and the August board meeting. But honestly, that doesn't really matter. Of course, we can always call special meetings if something came up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking even for, because I know Joe and Bill and Liz, you have kids, and if open house is on Monday, the 23rd, and you've got a board meeting, then you can't go to the open house for your kids.
That's true. If going that far from July is a problem, do we want to consider the 16th?
Of August,
Yes.
the only reason I want it is because as we know with hiring, there's a good chance we might be hiring people that late. I would push it later, to
Right
be
at
honest
the
with
end.
you.
I understand. Then let's push to the 30th.
That's just always been mine, because,
Yeah. That sounds good. That's fine.
and then, like I said, even your teachers then, that they wouldn't show up for the board meeting because they're going to be at the open house. So,
Yeah, right. And again,
Do you
if
want
we have
to,
something we need a special meeting, we can have a special meeting.
okay.
move the June meeting up a week?
Do you want to, Karen?
Yeah, we can move it up to the 21st.
So the June to 6/21.
Okay, I don't know if I'll be here that day. Just letting you know.
The 21st I can do. I will be back from vacation on the 20th. I was going through and checking calendars. So, because June was a concern for me as well, but it'll be fine. I was concerned about the 28th being so close to July and you're closing out of fiscal year 21.
I was just looking to see, the county auditor has their meetings too, that we have to kind of coordinate all of our meetings with. I'm trying to see if I could find out when they schedule theirs in June.
So we're still discussing the June, trying to figure that out, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll vote on these next month at the regular meeting.
Right. Committees also, I'll have a list of all the committees on next month.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I can let you know what the calendar is for the county auditor's office.
Okay, so we can make a decision then?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, Karen and I'll talk and we'll let you know, but we'll pencil it in as June 21st unless we hear otherwise before the January meeting.
okay.
Cool.
All right. Well, now we can move on to facilities.
Yeah, so this is the, we had by the way, Sagamore Voice did a nice article about our meeting last week. So I know that it's going to start getting some talk in the community. And we had Bill Prentisil from the Ohio Facility Construction Commission in. He reminded us, of all the work that we've done so far that was then delayed by COVID. And his recommendation was that we now start to talk about hiring a pre-bond architect to look at the Ohio Facility Construction Commission's work, to meet with us and start talking about different options for plan, and to also start engaging our community in, what their thoughts are about facilities. So I think the discussion we need to have here is, one, are we ready to start seriously the work of hiring a pre-bond architect? And then two, if we are, do you have a favorite option of either opening up bids to anybody who wants to apply, or for us to use the folks that OFCC has worked with, and possibly almost every other school district in our area has built new buildings over the past 5 to 10 years. So we could, speak with Hudson Revere, Talmadge, Woodridge, Manchester, Springfield, Barberton, Coventry, all those places that are building, to see if they have recommendations for architects.
God bless.
Thank you. Sorry. I was trying to unmute or mute.
Well, I guess one of my questions would be, is that utilizing someone who has worked with the OFCC before, and the districts that you're naming, is that the route they followed? And if they use some of those recommendations, really kind of like a counterpart of how those are kind of meshing together, would be that way you're getting, in my mind, someone they're used to working with, and we also can get direct feedback on, what it was like to work with them, the quality of their work and such, from the local districts around that we can interact with.
I have not been involved in school construction since my time in Barberton. So, that's been 12, 14 years ago. Well, in fact, we built the high school over there in 2000. So it's been 20 years, but it was an OFCC building. And this is what I can say about their architects. When we go to Capitol Conference and you go to the trade show, there are always probably 10 to 20 architects that are there that have worked with schools. And my guess is if you start talking to area districts and the OFCC, those are all kinds of the folks that they would probably say should be on our list to ask to submit a proposal and to interview. If we open it to anybody and just put a RFP out there, request for proposals from anybody in the area, you're likely to get 50 to 100 architects who submit, many of whom will have had no experience working with OFCC or doing school construction, which is, if I had to give advice, my advice would be to talk to OFCC and area school districts and get a list of architectural firms that we want to invite to submit a proposal that the board could then review with the rubric like Bill talked about and interview before getting them on board.
I just want to say, I've got mixed feelings about this. And I've already, talked to Joe about this. We did talk in the pre-board meeting. I mean, I know we need new buildings, but is it going to happen now? Is it going to happen in 2 years? Is it going to be 5 years from now? Looking at our economy right now, the problems we've had with COVID, the money that we've had to spend for the COVID related stuff, for our buildings and our staff and everything. Are people going, we just passed a levy. Is the community, is this going to be something right now that they are like, yeah, we need to do this? Or are they going to say, why are you doing this? And even, I know it takes a couple years before, this is just hiring a pre-architect. I understand that, and it would be a couple years, but what if this doesn't happen for 5 years or say 10 years? By then, those plans will change. So I don't know if this is something we should be doing right, this year, or maybe we need to wait another year and see what happens in 2021 and see where our economy goes and see how things are going. That's just my opinion.
I think we move forward because whether we have buildings in 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, we need to start the process. We need to have the discussion. If we have the pre-board, the pre-architect and we create a plan and we have community involvement, and then economically it turns out to be a bad time and we have to put it on hold for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, so be it. The plans aren't going to change fundamentally. We're still going to have the need of a building. We're going to have the basis, the background there. We're going to have the foundation. If we then have to pick it up and make some minor alterations to it 5 years from now, so be it. But at least we've started the process, so we do know if the economy's good, the economy's bad, we are going forward, we are not going forward, the community is or is not behind it. But at least we know where we stand, whether we're doing renovations or doing new buildings.
It'd also be broken into phases. If we go through this process and let's say the community is interested and they're involved, and the determination is that we're going to build 4 new buildings, but right now we are only interested in building 1 because of the finances. Well, then we can, you do it in phases. So maybe it's a middle school that comes first and elementaries come later. But Chad, I agree with you that if we start moving forward now, at least getting an idea of what these might be, and have the architect, and part of their role is helping facilitate community meetings where we can get feedback. And I've said it 100 times, and I'll continue to say it. The community has to decide this is what we want to do. If any of us try to push this down anybody's throat, it will not be successful. The community needs to decide what kind of facilities they want for their kids. And if that's what they decide, I think we need to, listen to them and move forward.
Now, I have a question with the community involvement, which I am all for. Are we going to have a committee like we've had for the levies, and so that it is very parent community oriented, and let them be part of the team, so to speak, because they're the ones that are going to have to sell it.
The model, the model that seems to work in other school districts who have done this works is there's a couple community teams. The first is the community team that decides what plan do we want. Do we want new buildings? Do we want renovations? Do we want to consolidate? And they look at all kinds of different plans that the architects put together and decide that this is the model that is right for our district. And it should involve a lot of community members. We're not talking 4 or 5, a lot of community members with a lot of meetings, giving a lot of feedback. And then the second group is, okay, who's now going to spearhead that bond campaign to get this done, like we did with the operating levy.
So then, Joe, is it feasible to ask for a committee to be formed now? Because what if nobody wants to be bothered with it? Then we're kind of like, okay, now what do we do? You might only have the same 2 people. And I agree, more input, the better, and to let them be the impetus behind decision making. But if they're not interested, if nobody cares, or I'd like to say it's not that so much, but they don't want to get involved, maybe it'd be a better way to put it, then we're kind of like stuck, aren't we?
Well, I mean, I just go back to what Bill said is typical in all the cases that he's done, is the next step he's in all the, or in most of the places he's worked, is to get a pre-bond on to start putting some more concrete kind of plans together, and then get that community involved to see, you know, where they stand with it.
Right, and I thought the opposite. I thought we should I suggested even maybe doing that at our open forum in January, seeing what the community would think. But I don't know. To me, it just seems backwards the way that they're saying to do it, but they're the experts, I guess, not me at this. So.
I honestly just think if we have a community open forum in January to talk about this, I think there'll be a lot of questions that none of us have the answers to. You know, I think that having the experts who are take the next step, and part of what you pay them for is to run those community meetings, because they've done it lots and lots of times. They know how to get feedback, and they know how to talk about design, and they know how to talk about procuring land if we need to do that. They know how to do all of that. And I could see an open forum in January where people blister us with those questions, and a lot of our answers are going to be, well, we don't know, or it could be this, it could be that, without having somebody look at the OFCC report and give us really doable solutions.
Just to echo, this is Matt, just to echo what Joe said, when our preliminary meetings with OFCC, Joe's exactly right. Having their expertise and an architect, I think what it does is if we do too much early preliminary community feedback in groups, I think it can get very convoluted, and everyone's got sort of an opinion on, or maybe they have an affinity for a certain building that they think should be one way or the other, or a grade level. But if we can partner with an architect and rely on that OFCC data, it can show us, you know, our enrollment projections, help us determine how many buildings we need. And it's not so much of our opinion or our names attached to it as executives or board members. And it helps, I think it helps the community to hear sort of a neutral third party that we've hired to come in and consult. And then to also somebody that has the strength and the resume to say, you know, if you want to go drive down the road and check out Hudson's facilities or Brecksville Broadview Heights, or, you know, another community where they've done a project, I think that helps people to be able to compare and see sort of the road that we're headed down, and help them from there, rather than be so much attachment to our names and our roles in the district. That would be my weigh in on the value of bringing in an architect.
I just don't see it as being wasted money. And I know that's somewhat of Tammy's concern, is she doesn't want to spend the money if we end up going nowhere, the community doesn't jump on it. And that's fine, but I think somewhere in the next 10 years, we're gonna need new buildings. It's how many and which ones. So I don't see it as being wasted. It just might be deferred.
You have to have a plan in place. And the best thing to do is have an architect that can lead you and guide you through this process. And maybe have that person that would be more knowledgeable. And then when you go to a public meeting, somebody is there, he would be the facilitator to answer the questions that people have, probably more easily than anybody else. But maybe what would help is if you met with the board ahead of time to discuss what the OFCC had to say and what the plans are and what his recommendation or his thoughts would be, and then go out to a community meeting. I think you have to start planning at some point. So whether you spend the money now or later, it's still going to be a plan that's going to be in place for the future of the schools.
And we were talking about what, 40,000? Is that correct, Joe?
Bill Prentisil said that typically a pre-bond architect can cost in the $40,000 range. He said there are several different models. He said that when we ask people to submit bids and we interview them, that they will have lots of different pricing models. Some will say, you don't pay us anything now, but if you, or you pay us X amount, and if you select us to, if the community decides to go forward with this and selects us to eventually build something, then that'll come off the cost. He did recommend not getting into a deal like that. His suggestion was hire the architect, just pay the fee, because then you're not tied to anybody. It might turn out that they do a really good job as a pre-bond architect, and you realize that we don't want to use them for construction. And so then you wouldn't be tied to them. But I think that until we start interviewing or asking firms to submit proposals, that, you know, we may be surprised. It might be less, it might be more. I don't know.
Bill, what are your thoughts? We haven't heard from you yet.
I think we got to open it up. We got to let somebody come in and tell us what their thought process is, because my understanding is with this whole thing, he's going to come in and tell us whether the OFCC report is even accurate or not. You know, that's kind of what they do on that aspect of it too. And I know my standpoint is, I know that if we did an open forum, I wouldn't be able to answer any questions the public would probably ask me. So I would rather have somebody that knows what they're doing there to be able to handle those sorts of things.
I
Okay.
guess I'm kind of in the middle.
Yep. Go ahead, Liz. I was going to ask you.
No, I guess I'm kind of in the middle. I see where we need to start looking at, what do we need to do? Do we need to look at building buildings? Do we need to look at consolidation? Do we need to look at, you know, rehabbing our buildings? You know, where do we truly stand, or a combination of things? And that architect and that skill set is what we need. However, I'm also sitting here thinking 2020 has been a nightmare in so many different ways. And, you know, we're rolling into 21. We are just now at the beginning of getting vaccinations out to our riskiest population. And we should start to, can we kick the can just till the end of the school year, I guess is what I'm thinking, to kind of see how we roll this out, because we have spent a lot on COVID this year. I do think we need to get started, and I don't want to wait a full year to do it, but just kind of see how are we going to finish out the school year and how everything has impacted us. And I think Joe's right when we were talking about the calendar and such. I think we're going to be able to start a normal school year next year. I really do. But I'd really like to see how things start to swing. So I'm kind of like in the middle of that whole conversation. And, you know, we're talking about skill sets that none of us have. We all have very unique skill sets, and I think that that's part of what makes us well-rounded, but none of us are architects. And I remember when Barberton got a new high school, and I wasn't anywhere near working in that. So that's, yeah, I just don't see, like I said, the skill sets are really important, and that architect is definitely something we need to get, but I think I'm wanting to wait just a little bit to kind of get us through until things kind of settle just a little bit and we see better where we are.
The only thing I would add is that timing is just vitally important, right? And it is a multiple year process to go from the idea of looking at facilities to passing a bond issue. And right now, between now and November of 22, we've got 2 years to get this done. And what we learned about the stadium, which none of us were here for, but we still all get eat about, is that there was an operating levy needed And this community or prior board or whoever you want to place blame on. Now, we needed the stadium. Nobody can deny that. But the issue was they pushed for the stadium to get built while they needed operating money. And after the stadium got built, this community was not interested in also then passing a levy for operating money. So right now we have an operating levy in our rearview mirror, just about a year and a half, 2 years. And there's one ahead of us, and it's coming in a handful of years. But if we push too far, we're going to get to the point where we're going to say, listen, we know we need operating levy next year. It would be foolish to put a bond issue to build buildings, because if you build buildings but don't have teachers to work in them, that's really poor planning, and it causes a lot of angst. And we saw it here with our stadium. Talmadge saw it recently with their middle school. And that's a place I don't want to get us. So if it's not now, it might not be 3 years. It might be 7 or 8 years. Is all I'm suggesting with this.
So if we were to even put this out there for people, how long before we would even be considering hiring this person to take a look at all this data that we have received from the OFCC?
If the board gave me direction tonight, and it's not a vote, by the way, it's just direction. If the board gave direction for us to start soliciting architects to submit proposals, Matt and I would get busy on that over winter break. In January, I imagine it would probably be February before those proposals would be due. And I think you could conceivably be looking at architects' proposals at February or March board meeting to hire. And so I think ideally you would have an architect hired by spring break that could start this process.
I go back to, this will not be wasted money. I mean, we need new buildings. So many of our buildings are in such bad shape. We're going to need them sooner or later. I see no reason to kick the can down the road. We need to start the process. We need to start a plan. The plan will change based on community involvement, and that's fine. That's what we need to, but we at least have to have a starting point. I'd rather start now than 6 months from now or 2 years from now.
Okay, so I know you said not a vote, but we still need to come to an agreement here. So it sounds like Bill and Chad are a go.
Yes.
Judy?
Well, I'm not going to stand in the way of progress, but I mean, to start the process and then hope we don't reach a major roadblock. Because I think it's going to, with the economy still being precarious, unemployment is still up there, and people are basically struggling to make house payments, and that they're not going to want to hear this. And the recovery, economically speaking, will not happen overnight. So, you know, it's a mixed bag of nuts. But I understand we got to get it done. You don't need buildings collapsing.
Right.
Or far worse.
I agree. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it too, you know. Liz?
I just think that by what Joe's timeline was that he just stated, we wouldn't even look at hiring someone probably till March, end of March. If you hire someone by the end of March, that company then has to come in, and they're going to take, I'd say 45 to 60 days to go over that whole entire plan, go through all those buildings, put their own plan together. So now we're looking at probably June by the time we even hear anything back from that company or that architect. And I think by that time we would have an idea of what the economy's doing, what you know, all that kind of stuff, how things are starting to rebound. and that sort of thing. And then we can make a final decision on on how we're going to push forward from there. That's the only reason why I think, because I think if we keep waiting, now we're looking at, we aren't even going to be able to start thinking about it. And then we're going to have 1 year to put something together before we're trying to put a bond issue out. We're looking at November of 2022.
And while that's true, obviously it's the public's going to know that a architectural firm has been hired, and to me that's not rocket science to put one and one together to know that's where we're headed, and it's still being headed right now, though they can't see it's going to be long term down the road. They're just looking at the here and now, and the first thing is more money, and I'm afraid that people will just close their minds to it, and it'll be hard to overcome. Because again, I pray that the economy rebounds, and it will, but it's not going to rebound, I don't think, as quickly as everyone believes it will. I could be wrong, and I want to be wrong, but you know, with another stimulus package coming out and businesses closing permanently, that means people are unemployed. And I think they're looking at their immediate future and their immediate circle, which I don't blame them. That's my only concern, that they're gonna figure it out. We don't have to tell them, we don't have to draw them a picture. And I'm afraid, you know, it could just cause a lot of walls being built that's going to be even tougher to break down at some point.
I agree. I do.
We're not hiding anything from the community. We're not trying to.
I didn't say you were hiding, Chad.
No,
but
I don't mean it, but I'm just saying, I mean, it's got to happen. We need new buildings.
Agree. Oh, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with that at all. We do. It's just like, you know what we've been saying, the timing of everything. We don't have to come out saying, oh, we're going to plan to major renovations in the year 2024. I don't know. I've just picked that date. Just don't hold me to it. But right now, it's the mindset that people are in at this point in time, that they're looking, they won't see the future. Everybody thinks the future looks a little on the bleak side for some, but I'm just afraid that they're going to just be very afraid. It's like, well, we don't know if we're going to be able to pay the rent, and now you want more money for buildings, even though we can sit there and say, we're not going to do it right away. It's not necessarily going to be done right away. It's a process that could take several years. We know that, but we have to be able to be sure that they can be open-minded enough for that.
Yeah, and that, Judy, that's the importance of having a lot of community input.
Right.
Is that it's not us speaking to the community, it's the community getting together to hold these meetings that we facilitate, and them telling us, listen, we want a new building. We want 4 new buildings. We don't want any new buildings. Them making that decision. I think it would be disingenuous of us to try to push any kind of plans that we have in our own minds down anybody's throat.
Well,
This,
that was not my intention at all. Because
I know.
You know, but I'm just saying, I'm just looking at the mindset. And
Mhm.
maybe because if they get really, I don't know if they're bent out, Joe, they might not even want to participate in a very important role, because they are the drivers of this. So that's, I don't know what the good timing would be. That's the bottom line too.
Yeah.
Joe's point about you don't want your bond issue to come too close to your operating issues is a critical point that he makes. And so when he talks about timing, those things are all so incredibly important. So that's why it's that feeling of angst, to use Joe's word, of, what is that right decision right now? And when we look at getting this started, and because like Judy is saying, these are tough times. This has been really rough for so many. But we're looking at a future that, we're all looking at a magic crystal ball, trying to hope that we can make those right choices down the road. So that's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
And even if we said yes and say in 2 years, I mean, putting a bond issue, you don't even know if it would pass. It could take several attempts before it would pass.
Mhm.
And then you're back to also needing an operating levy at the same time. You know, they could cross. So I'm just not comfortable with it right now.
It's really important they don't cross.
Karen, what was the projected date for another operating levy? 3 years from now?
Well, we really didn't have a projected date because we know we're deficit spending right now.
Okay.
So it's just going to continue. And I guess it depends on, you know, what happens. We've got a lot of expenses now because of COVID.
I know.
Hopefully when the stimulus package goes through, maybe we'll get some more relief there. But I mean, it's been costly with all this stuff.
But I mean, a bond issue extends the life of that levy because over the next several years, we're going to, I mean, this to me is the decision. This operating levy that was passed in 2019, are we going to use that to buy a bunch of old or new boilers for old buildings and new roofs for old buildings? And spend that money on that? Because if we do that, then why would we ever want to build new buildings? We just put new boilers in old buildings. Or is it the time to say, listen, let's use that money that was passed in an operating levy to actually operate the district, and a bond issue can cause us to have new facilities that we're not going to have to spend general fund money on the upkeep. If there's a bond issue extends the life of the operating levy is,
Mhm.
I guess, my point.
But remember that 70-some% of our budget is personnel costs, which has nothing to do with that.
If there's no plan in place, there is no flexibility. We have to have a plan. We have to have some idea of what we're doing, what the cost is going to be before we can even make the decision. Are we going to bail out on a bond issuance for 5 years so that we can go after operating? Or can we do a bond issuance now to extend the operating? If there's no plan, there's no options.
Right.
I just see we have to have the plan in place.
It's just a matter of timing. You need to have the plan. You need to have the architect in place to have the plan, to facilitate the plan. It's just the timing of when to do it. But you have to start someplace.
Right, and with a plan in place, we can manipulate or, adjust timing as needed to fit the community needs, to fit the building needs, to fit the facility needs. But without the plan, there's nothing. So I think we have to start the process with a plan.
But if you have the plan, and perhaps the architect that you select could say, well, maybe if you started with this building, or maybe you could do renovations in this building. That's what he's going to be able to tell you, what over and above what the OFCC said, what practically could happen. Maybe one building could be retrofit with something else. But he's the expert that's got the information that can kind of move you in that direction. And I've worked with a lot of architects and stuff in my career, and you need to have somebody to give you that direction that's got expertise in that area to move the plan forward. And you're only going to put the architect in place. It's not like you're going to be building anything right now. So anything has to start with a plan. Otherwise, the community was going to say there's no thought process in it. You just threw it out there.
Well, and the other thing is, right now, we're not even recommending. The goal is to get an architect hired, but the fact is this: if we went out right now and asked for proposals, the board would still have to consider the proposals and adopt the hiring of an architect. It could very possibly be, but by the time this happens, more of us are swayed one way or the other, that either, yeah, it is time, or no, it's not time. What if it comes back and these architects cost $200,000 a piece? Maybe we don't go that way. Or, maybe we, I guess what I'm saying is maybe we learn more in the process of even interviewing architects and finding out more about them.
Joe, I wanted to add in also that I know we had talked a while back about when the stadium and athletics bond comes off, I know we were trying to be sensitive to timing of that. So we wouldn't be doubling up too much, but that would be one consideration, that we're not that far off from that being paid off.
2030.
2030 is when that comes off?
Mhm.
Okay, well, that's
The
a little
athletic,
further
we have
out.
another one coming off before that, right, Karen? The renovations from
Yeah,
2000.
full improvement bonds are coming off in 2026.
Okay, so
2026.
that's 2026. The other thing is, I know that with the work that Rick and I have scheduled on into next fiscal year, right now, it's sort of, we're in a good market for needing construction work, architects, that whole dynamic, because that sector of the economy has been hit hard. And I know that they are looking for work. So I mean, on a business standpoint, that would probably play in our favor right now. I feel like we may get a better, more competitive rate, because the fact is there are a lot of businesses like that in their line of work needing work. So that is another consideration. But I agree with Karen and Joe. I think if we don't start the movement in that direction, the first step forward is going to be hard. And we are in a pandemic, and there are a lot of things that we are not sure of. But I'll tell you, I've been in this district several years now, a few years in my role now. And one thing I'm very sure of is that our buildings are falling apart, and they weren't ready for COVID. And I know a lot of people say, oh, a lot of districts weren't ready for COVID. That's not true. Newer construction buildings were ready to convert to a COVID atmosphere. We were really not. We had to spend a lot of money to retrofit our buildings, because our buildings were built in war eras, bomb shelter eras, and that's just a fact. And I think that if we brought an architect on and got them to really, in a commonsensical way, present the data that OFCC has given to us and put dollars to that and a vision to that, I know that, the future is uncertain, but one thing, again, is certain. Kids will always need to go to school, and we will always need good buildings. That's not going to change. That's going to be a constant. So I feel like we just need to carefully craft that message. And as Joe has constantly said, it's got to be the community that say we need this. And I think prior to COVID, we were getting that message from a lot of our feedback. In fact, when our operating levy was successful, a lot of the feedback we were getting out of that was, when are we going to talk facilities? Because parents want something to be proud of, and so do the kids, and so do we. And I think we've done our best, but the Band-Aids aren't going to last forever. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, well, we're going to have to come to a decision here soon, because it's 10 to 7. I'm okay if you want to start interviewing architects and getting some information and getting the cost, because you have to bring it to the board anyways, correct?
Oh, I mean, let me make sure I'm clear with this. Matt and I will not be interviewing the board will be interviewing architects. Matt and I hope that you would involve us in that. What Matt and I would do would be reaching out to OFCC and area school districts, get a list of architectural firms that we would invite to create a proposal. We would bring those proposals to the board to review. You would select from that group a handful to interview, and you would have a board meeting where you would interview the architects and make a determination whether you were going to hire one or not.
Okay, so this could take a few months before we would even.
It'll take time. Yeah, it'll
Okay.
take time.
I think you know where I stand. Start the process.
Are you sure, Chad? I'm not clear on that now.
Just making sure.
All right, Judy, Liz.
At this point, we're not throwing any money in the game for the architect, and to pull them in and start looking for them, that also gives us an amount of time to be able to see how the economy is going to start to turn, and how COVID either ramps up or slows down. Hopefully it's a slow down. I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
So, and as far as the expense of hiring the architect, like, we have a guesstimate of what it could be, but we don't know until we really start getting those appraisals in, and we can make that final determination when those come in. So I would say we could go ahead and start looking to have them submit proposals.
And if we're not happy with any of them, we can continue looking.
Absolutely right.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm getting that everybody's in agreement then to go ahead and start the process, Jeff. Okay.
Matt and I will start collecting proposals from architectural firms, and when we do that, the board can schedule interviews with those folks.
Okay, all right,
And we'll make sure that we talk to Bill Prentice-Hill to make sure he walks us through the right steps.
okay,
Awesome. Thank you.
all right. I don't think, will we have time for executive session? I mean, we only got 8 minutes. So do you want to add that to the end of the board meeting?
Yeah, if when we get to the regular meeting, when we get to the adoption of the agenda, if somebody could just make a motion to amend it to include a executive session at the end to talk about employment, we can do that then.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Anything else? Everybody good for this one? Okay. I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Lermer,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley.
Yes.
Okay. We'll see you in 6 minutes or so.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Good evening.
Hey, Jim. There it is. How are you doing, Jim? How is the Career Center?
Career Center's doing fine. As a matter of fact, that's what I'm going to talk about tonight at my
Oh, good.
riveting meeting, a summary of our 5-year plan.
Oh, awesome. I hope it doesn't take 5 years to summarize the plan.
No. I've got it down to 20 minutes, so I've done pretty good.
Thanks.
Don't spoil it. Don't say anything now.
No, I won't. I don't want to give anything away.
Joe, are you gonna have the agenda up the whole time?
If you'd like me to.
Yeah, because I've got a split screen. It would be
Oh,
easier. if I-
cool.
Is that
Yeah,
okay?
I'll share the agenda, and we are recording already, and we're live on Facebook right now. So
Okay, you've got it
Right,
on
sure.
you got it on the work session agenda.
oh, there you go. Thank you. Boom. Gotcha.
Thank you. Yeah, if you got it there, then I don't have to do the split screen. There we go. Okay. You have a flag?
Oh, I do.
Awesome.
I messed that up last time.
Oh, perfect. All right, we need Bill.
He's here.
he is. And it was too cloudy to see the,
Oh, the Christmas star?
yeah. I'm sure it'll be on the news, I'm sure. So,
Oh.
all right.
You'll see it in 600 years. You'll have another chance.
Great, thanks. Okay, it is now 7 p.m. on Monday, December 21st, 2020. I hereby call this regular meeting of the school board into session. Okay. Karen, roll call, please.
Forgot to unmute. Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer,
Here.
Mr. Bussey,
Here.
Ms. Matlin,
Here,
Mrs. McKinley.
Here.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance, flag
flag
of the
of
United
the
States of America
And
and
to
to
the
the republic
for
which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I'm going to make a motion for the approval of the agenda, but I also would like to make a motion to amend the agenda to include executive session to discuss employment of personnel at the end. Can I get a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes,
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
yes.
Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
Okay, communications, Joe, anything?
No, we've not been doing communication since we've been going this format. If you would like us to add it at some point, we can. Hopefully, we won't be doing these Zoom meetings like this much longer.
Much longer. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. Okay. Next is the appointment of President Pro Tem for January 11th, 2020 organizational meeting. I make a motion to nominate Chad.
I'll second.
Karen, roll.
Well, wait a minute. Didn't we do that at the special?
Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah, I know, but did we have to do it during the meeting here? That's why I wasn't sure.
No, we could just say that we've appointed.
Okay, that's fine. All right, then we've appointed Chad for the January meeting.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
Like, next item, Tammy, is December 31st was to be the last day that boards of education could hold Zoom or meetings like this. And the governor has extended that through, I believe, July 31st. It's not to say that we are, but it gives us the ability to do that if need be.
Okay. I make a motion.
I'll second.
Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes,
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
Okay, next is committee reports. Is there anybody that has anything? Liz?
Unfortunately, yes.
That's okay.
I know. Well, we're right at the end of the year, and so things have been a little busy down in Columbus, I guess, to say the least. So I'll try to get through these as quickly as I can. So House Bill 231 is getting sent to the governor, and this requires the Ohio Department of Education to compile and publicize lists of entities that provide free and reduced price epinephrine. So we all know, like, those EpiPens that kids use, or adults too, who have significant allergies. And it allows school districts to create training for staff and instruction for students on food allergies and treatments. What's also important for this one is it permits schools to procure and use injectable or nasally administer glucagon. I got to see if I say this right, glucagon in accordance with prescribed policies and examples. So where everybody knows that like someone who is diabetic would take insulin, this is like the opposite of insulin for when your sugar levels are too low. So it's like that opposite piece. So schools will be able to have that. Let's see here. The next one is House Bill 450 has now been sent to the governor as well. This bill requires fiscal officers of school districts and other local governments to provide certificates of transition to their successors. And it modifies the duties of the school district treasurers to ensure delivery to the treasurer's successor of all papers related to the affairs of the district. So important stuff there. Senate Bill 331 has also been sent to the governor, and this one sunsets the academic standards review committees in English, math, social studies, and science, and some other committees as well. It also requires a sunset review committee to be convened during each General Assembly. Senate Bill 10 has also gone to the governor for signing. And this bill increases the penalty for theft in office when the value of stolen property or services is $150,000 or more. It also expands the court's jurisdiction. Let's see here, Senate Bill 259. The bill authorizes, this one was voted on, the bill authorizes the conveyance of state-owned real property. So the bill was amended in committee to include provisions from House Bill 360, and this is where it kind of hits us, which requires the installation of water bottle filling stations and drinking fountains in new school buildings that are constructed with the assistance from the OFCC. And I thought this one was important to talk about because it does mention construction with OFCC and then water filling stations like we've seen in our buildings. We do have some of those. So it's just more of a mandate than anything, but something we've already been doing. The Senate passed House Bill 409, and this bill modifies student attendance requirements for certain e-schools, so those electronic schools. It was amended in committee on the Senate floor to include the following provisions, and the provisions are really the kicker here. It exempts districts from retaining a student under the third grade reading guarantee for this school year. So this is something we've been waiting on. It extends the ability of the superintendent of public instruction to adjust or waive the deadlines on a variety of actions of the State Board of Education. And let's see here, it prohibits report cards for districts in this school year, 2021, and it provides safe harbor from sanctions and penalties from the state report card ratings. So this is something I've talked about in other months. So these things are finally starting to happen. Hasn't gone to the governor's desk yet though. But it provides flexibility to school districts and ESCs regarding educational requirements of substitute teachers for the 2021 school year. And that's something that Joe had talked about before. The bill will be sent to the House for a concurrence vote before it can go to the governor. So we're finally seeing some of these things that we've talked about get a little motion. It's not to the governor's desk yet though. Senate passed House Bill 409. And this bill modifies student attendance we already talked about that one. Hold on, that's what I just talked about. I gotta scroll down. The Senate passed House Bill 436, and this bill requires districts. Now it's saying districts, it's not talking community schools and it's not talking about private schools. It's just districts, which that's one of those things that puts a bee under my bonnet because it's like, if it's good for kids, it should be good for all kids. To administer annual dyslexia screenings and establish multisensory structured literacy certification process for teachers employed by the district or school who provide instruction in grades K through 3. The bill also requires all K-3 teachers and special education teachers in grades 4 through 12 to complete between 6 and 18 hours of professional development over a set time frame. And this bill was amended in committee to require the Ohio Department of Education to do a cost analysis on dyslexia screening programs. And so it has to go back to the House for a concurrence vote. As a primary teacher myself, many primary teachers have reading endorsements, and your training within reading endorsements has the training that they're discussing here. And dyslexia in and of itself is actually a medical diagnosis. So it is, and these are multimodal education is something that's very common in classrooms as well. So that's what I've got for you this month.
Sorry, had to unmute. Thank you. I'll get to you, Jim, in a minute. Chad, Judy, or Bill, did anybody have anything?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I was at the virtual foundation meeting on December 9th, and there's just a few things, I guess, that need to be reported. First, they announced that no mini grants were given this year like they normally do in the fall. So that was tabled. Nights Caring for Nights is still active. Currently, they have 62 participants, and families can get the food during school hours. Ann said the pantry is well stocked, and they had plans, which I am sure they already executed considering vacation started, to pack heavy in December due to the breaks so that people will have food to tide them over the holidays. The last part of the agenda dealt with the golf outing. There's been a few changes to the golf outing. First, it's going to be held at Ellsworth in Hudson. I don't know where that's at, but Joe, I think you probably have a pretty good idea.
Well, I know where the streets are all around it because I hit it into the streets all the time. Yes. Marlow
right.
Road.
So it's scheduled for June 5th. They had to change the date to accommodate the new location. It's still an 8:30, excuse me, shotgun start. Now the Ellsworth requires 125 golfers, so we're really going to have to step up the A game to get more golfers involved. As it stands now, the foundation will take care of breakfast while Ellsworth will provide lunch and dinner, so that everything pretty much stays the same. The only thing that's still up in the air and in question is the price per golfer, and that's going to be determined rather soon.
All right. Thank you. Chad? No?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
Nothing.
Bill? Nothing? Okay, Mr. Verost, your report.
Hi, thank you. Mrs. Obertil, Dr. Clark, Board President Tammy Strong, and members of the board. Following is my CVCC December report. As I stated in my November report that I was going to give highlights from our 5-year plan that was updated in November and approved at our November board meeting. First is our 5-year technology plan. We have spent $271,000 in network upgrades, classroom technology, and program upgrades in fiscal year 20. And for the fiscal years 21 through 25, we will be spending an aggregate amount of $1,575,000 on technology. Our 5-year facilities plan, in fiscal year 20, we did spend $1,658,000 on facility upgrades. And for fiscal years 21 through 25, we will be spending $3,966,000. As we do not have a permanent improvement levy, we will be transferring these amounts from our general operating fund into a permanent improvement fund that we have established within the Career Center. Now, the highlights of the 5-year financial forecast. While we are clearly in uncertain times due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the district remains well positioned in terms of cash balance for the foreseeable future. Based upon the assumptions developed in the forecast update, our projected cash balance at June 30th of 2025 is $17.8 million. This compares favorably to our May 20 forecast, which projected a balance of $15.1 million. The increased balance is the result of primarily 4 factors. First is the increased estimated tax revenues from increased property valuation growth from new construction and reappraisals throughout the district, as well as a stable collection rates. As to date, we have not seen any impact on collections resulting from the pandemic. Second reason is the reduced state foundation revenue, which was projected in our May forecast for fiscal years 21 through 23. That did not occur, and we don't expect it to occur during the 5-year reporting period. We have a reduced salary and fringe benefit cost increases resulting from the elimination of 2 certified positions in fiscal year 21 and 1 position that will be eliminated in the succeeding period. Also, number 4, we've had no premium increase in health insurance for fiscal year 21. And our forecast basically shows a less than a 5% increase in health insurance over the succeeding 5-year period. While our cash balance is certainly one factor to consider, the revenue surplus or deficit is an area that will be continually monitored. We expect our forecasting deficit spending not until fiscal year 25 was the first time that we will show deficit spending. Our district has been very fortunate to have an average tax collection rate of nearly 100% of currently billed taxes. Those taxes were collected and distributed to us annually for each of the past years. This trend did not change for either the 2 tax collections periods of 20 and since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we are expecting and forecasting virtually 100% of our tax collections. Our forecast assumes a 2% growth in our overall valuation in tax year 2020 based on the Summit County triannual update and a 2% growth rate in the 2021 Cuyahoga County property tax appraisal, which by the way represents about 54% of our district valuation. My last point is our organizational meeting will be virtual and will be held on Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 5:30. And that will follow, or I should say our regular board meeting will follow promptly at 6 p.m. And finally, on behalf of Superintendent Dave Mangus, the staff and members of the Board of Education of the Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, we wish all of you happy holidays and a happy new year. And finally, to quote from a poem by Clement Clark Moore, a happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Jim.
Good night, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, let's move into my recommendations. Item 1, I recommend you approve the consent items listed.
I'll motion.
I'll
second.
Here you have the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund and our membership dues for the board members, and a resolution declaring transportation impractical for 3 students.
Any discussion or questions? Okay, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer,
Yes.
Item 2 is a recommendation you approve the resolution to employ Bernie Bedingfield, our SERS retiree, as EMIS coordinator.
I'll
I'll
motion.
motion.
Second.
It'll be good to have her back. We've missed her, and she'll be back January 1 or 2, I suppose.
Okay. Any questions, discussion? Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer,
Yes.
And item 3, I recommend you approve the personnel items listed.
A motion.
I'll second.
Just, Danielle Cardinal is doing a long-term position for us. You might remember her because you probably shook her hand at graduation a few years ago. 2017, Nordonia grad who is doing a long-term sub, and we love hiring Nordonia grads. And you see we have a couple retirements. Charmaine Bowerly at the high school, who's been the athletic secretary now for the last few years and has done all sorts of things. And Kathy Sanzavera, our media resource person in Northfield, retiring. We wish them all of the best. They've been fantastic employees for many, many years.
Any questions, comments? No? All right, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
That concludes my report.
All right.
All right. I'm asking the board to approve the consent items.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay. The first item is the approval of the minutes from the special board meeting of November 23rd. Next item is the regular board meeting minutes of November 23rd, followed by the financial statements for the month of November. And if we could go into the operating fund right there. We'll go through that. So we're going to walk you through what happened to our finances during the month of November. So what you see here is our revenue, our actual revenue in fiscal year 21 is $835,838. And we're comparing that to last year, which was $2.5 million. And what you see is a $1.6 million variance. Seems pretty high. All this has to do is with timing. We received our rollback in Homestead last year in November. This year we received it in October. When we look at the $836,000 in the revenue, you can see that the state revenue represented 47.7%, while the local was at 36.8% and other is at 15.5%. When we look at our fiscal year to date information from July 1 to November 30th, 2020, you'll see that things kind of leveled out a little bit. We received $24.6 million in fiscal year 21 and $21.3 million in fiscal year 20. The $3.3 million variance, and we all know that's because the levy passed and we received tax collections in the second half of 2020 that impacted our fiscal year numbers. When we look at the breakdown of those numbers for the fiscal year, the $24.6 million, you'll see that tax revenue is at 77.3%. The next largest would be our state revenue, which is at 16.4%. Now, moving on to our expenditures for November, you'll see that we spent $3.6 million this year compared to last year, which was $4.4 million. We have a variance of $796,000. A lot of that has to do with the fact that we moved some of our COVID-19 expenses out of our general fund into the federal funds that we received for the CARES Act. Next slide. When we look at the November expenditures of $3.6 million, you'll see that salaries represent 66.3%, benefits represent 26.9%, and you can see the other percentages. You see the negative 2.7% for supplies, and that had to do with the COVID-19 expenditures that were moved out of there. When we look at our fiscal year date expenditures from July 1 to November 30th, we'll see that in fiscal year 21, we spent $21.3 million, where last year in fiscal year 20, we spent $20.5 million. So it was a variance of $861,000. And obviously we gave increases to our employees, and that represents a large part of that. When we look at the pie chart, what you'll see here is that personnel costs, salaries and benefits total 71.2%, with the next largest category being purchase services, which is at 17.2% of that $21.3 million. When we look at the alternative view of our expenses, the same $21.3 million, you'll see that for instruction, we spent 60.7%, which is the largest piece of the pie, followed by the next largest would be operations at 13.5. What this includes is all salaries, benefits, purchase services, supplies, capital outlay, and other objects in each one of these categories. It's not just salaries and benefits. When we look at the next slide, we'll see the breakdown of the instructional costs. So we had $12.9 million in instructional costs. Regular instruction was at 73.3%, followed by special ed, which is at 25.7%. And then you can see the totals, the actual dollars amount at the bottom of the slide. When we put everything together, the bottom line at November 30th, 2020, you'll see that we have a ending cash balance currently for fiscal year 21 at $18.4 million. Last year at this time, we had $17.4 million. So that was a variance of about $926,000. You can see that we've got monies encumbered to the tune of 6.7 million this year compared to last year at 5.6. I'd like to attribute that to the fact that we have more people putting purchase orders on ahead of time to avoid after the fact purchase orders. And then you see our ending cash balance, which is $107,377, different from where we were last year, which is pretty good at this time of year. So that's the end of my report. I do not have an educational focus tonight. I thought we would celebrate Christmas early.
All right, thank you, Karen. Any questions? All right, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, at this time, we're going to move into executive session. And when we return, we'll return to end our regular meeting, but no other business will take place after that. So if you want to sit on the Zoom meeting and wait for us to come back to adjourn, you can. That's it.
Tammy, or Joe, what are we using for the,
I'm creating a breakout room that I'm gonna invite you guys to in a little bit. And before, I'm also then going to go into Facebook and shut it off because I don't know if Facebook is going to broadcast the breakout room or the other room. And I don't want to, so let me get this room created.
Okay, we need a motion and a second to go into executive session.
I'll motion.
Okay. Second.
Thank you.
All right, so in this, Bill, Karen, Tammy, Judy, Liz, Chad, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We do have some. Okay, Todd. Thank you, Todd, for answering that.
And myself. Okay.
We want to vote?
Yeah, we have to vote.
Yes. You ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Matlin,
Yes.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Larmer.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Happy holidays, all.
Happy
Happy
holidays.
holidays.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Will we just join the breakout room?
I see your lips moving, Karen, but I didn't hear what you said.
I'm just talking to myself.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine.
Give me a motion, somebody.
Okay, I motion to adjourn.
A second.
Okay, Karen, roll.
Mrs. Strong,
Yes.
Mrs. McKinley,
Yes.
Mr. Bussey,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin. Ms. Matlin,
She mimed, yes.
she what?
She mimed it.
Yeah.
She might.
Sorry, wait, I thought I,
Okay,
Yes.
Ms. Matlin. Yes.
yes.
All right, Mr. Larmer.
Yes.
Thank you.
Don't give me too
All right.
many buttons to push.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry
Have a
Christmas,
good night.
everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas
New
and Happy New
Year.
Year.
Happy
Be
All right,
safe.
bye-bye.
Take
All right.
care.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.
Bye.